Hey guys, welcome back. Today I am with, what am I saying? This happened twice already today, okay? We're mixing up all of our words, but I'm here with my friend Lily.
Hi.
We did a video over on her channel talking about dating with a disability, well, blind dating, I should say, in particularly. And so I'm going to link all of that in the description box for you guys. But today we're going to be talking about what it's going to be like post-corona for us blind people. So, Lily, do you want to start off with anything?
So I definitely think it's going to be a little weird. Before Corona, blind people were already, no one knew what to do with us. Like, how do you speak to one of them? How do you interact with one of them? And no one knew what to do. And I feel like with Corona, post Corona, it's going to get even worse.
Right.
There were articles in March when only drive-thrus were open in certain places and blind people were walking up to the drive-thru and people were like, oh, this is unsafe. Like they were being turned away. And they were turning away sighteds too, don't get me wrong. But at the very least, the sighted person has the potential to drive a car. We didn't. We don't. And we're already, I guess we could get an Uber, but everybody has this perception of blind people. We have experience crossing roads, crossing highways, crossing whatever. It's new to you, but not new to us. And so I feel like there's just going to be more of that post-corona. As a blind person, we need someone to guide us. And someone's going to be like, but like, that's not 6 feet away.
Right. And it's funny because we were just talking about this with your video about like dating because, people want us to like touch them, like hold their arm, I think that's definitely true. I don't think that, I had a lot of issues just with the whole remote learning with accommodations, just because I'm always having issues trying to get accommodations, especially, well, it's never a matter of getting the accommodations. It's about professors actually understanding that I have an accommodation letter.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just a lot of that happened, which I spoke about in the video where I mentioned what quarantine has taught me. But I feel like even with things like that, it's just going to be even harder because, especially in my situation where professors are already, like, they already give me a hard time in class. Yeah. So I just feel like it's going to be even harder now because they're going to be like, okay, like you're not the only student that's back on campus. Like we have other students to help out. Mm-hmm. Not that the other ones have accommodations, but a lot of them don't have visible disability.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's definitely going to be an interesting thing.
I feel like it's going to be.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just going to say, I feel like it's going to be an increase of that. Like, we're going to have the professors who don't know how to handle the blind students. Like, okay, well, everybody needs accommodations. And so now we're going to be going to stores. We're going to be, and it's like, okay, well, everybody needs to do this or do that. And it's like, yes, perhaps, but I'm also blind. And, I can't see the demarcation line that tells me that I'm 6 feet away from the person. I can't see... potentially for supermarket shopping or grocery shopping rather in supermarkets, let's say, normally I take the person's arm and then we'd walk around. So maybe they'll guide us by the cart. Like we'll hold the back of the cart and but that's still not a 6 foot distance. And some people may still be uncomfortable with that. As a blind person, depending on what your level of vision is, you might not see someone wearing a mask. And that's also if they're wearing a mask or not. And that also may lend to some discomfort as a blind person, traveling as well, because you don't know if that person coughing is coughing behind the mask or not.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things you just mentioned. One, the markers. My school already emailed us talking about like, oh, we're gonna have like the little markers put in place, and I'm like, have we thought about how this is gonna be accessible? Because if I'm in line,
did you email them back?
I haven't. I have to contact them, but I'm like, if I'm in line at the lunch, like if I'm in the cafeteria trying to get food, and there's like a whole line of people, which the cafeteria is like where we line up to go and get food is pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, if I'm standing there, how am I going to know if I'm on like a marker? Am I going to be like, obviously I can hear, so I would know if I'm 6 feet away from somebody or if they're closer to me. Mm-hmm. But even then it's like, okay, I don't know. I might be totally out of space and, out of place, and people are going to be like, okay, she's not lined up. Like, what is she?
Mm-hmm.
And
And some people might help, but also other people may just be like,
yeah,
I don't even want to touch her because she's blind.
I know.
I don't know.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing, too. It's like helping people, because a lot of people in my school are always like willing to help me if like they see me struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like even with that, they're like, oh, like, do you need help? Like, but I feel like now it's going to be, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it,
So I feel like the altruism and this desire, this need to help the blind, the poor blind, is going to prevail. It's just going to be, people aren't going to know how to handle it. One of my friends, was going to one of the Black Lives Matter protests a few weeks ago, and she was looking for a train transfer because she had to change. And this lady was helping her, but she was kind of guiding her verbally rather than touching her. And
Right.
I was like, okay, that's an appropriate response, like that makes sense. And that also worked for my friend, but some people may not be comfortable. They're like, are you going to let me know in time if we're getting to stairs? Are we, so that's going to be a whole other, because, some people may just be like, okay, again, like with my friend, they may just guide you from afar. But also, as a blind person, you may not want to touch people, but you have no choice but to touch them because of whatever added assistance you need. And so what if we go back to the point where people, like, I've had a lot of people just grab me on the street, just being forcibly helpful. And so we may get back to that point where people are just grabbing, like, oh, here, let me help you. And I'm like, but do you have corona? So I feel like it's going to be weird on both sides.
It will. A few things I want to mention. One, the masks. I feel like wearing them, obviously, like, they're not covering our ears, but it's definitely disorienting, because I feel like we have to really, I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel like in a way, it kind of throws me off sometimes. I'll be walking, even wearing them now, and I'm not even cool or interacting with a lot of people, but wearing them now, I'm just like, this does not feel, and it doesn't feel normal for anybody, but I feel like in our specific situation, it's like, I don't know, we rely on really having full focus, on what we're doing. And so when we're kind of like, okay, this thing is like halfway suffocating me and I can't really pay attention to what I'm doing, you're kind of just wondering, like, okay. And I know for you too, because you travel more than I do, so in terms of like getting on the train and like going back and forth different places, so things like that. And also to what was it that you mentioned just now? See, I'm like, not the thing about the grabbing. I feel like you said something I was gonna respond to. Oh man, my mind is all over the place.
Honestly, I really don't even remember what I said. I just throw words at a situation sometimes and hope it makes sense.
I get that. No, but I feel like I'm trying to remember what it was. Dang it. Okay, let's just keep going, and then eventually I'll figure out what I say.
So I can't speak too much to traveling with the mask because I have not been out much. Once school went online, then we were like had to leave the dorm a few weeks later. It's also like, I go to a public school, and so it's like public property. It's also a former part of like the hospital, a hospital, and it's literally across the street from the hospital. And so they were like, yeah, we might need this for medical space. This was right in the thick of like mid-March. And so I was staying with one of my friends for a few months, and then I came back home, and I did not do my dad came to my friends at some point and, went grocery shopping. So I was just like walking with him, being guided. And then I've gone to a few doctor's appointments that I've had. And I've just always gone with my mom, in part because I did not want to touch people on the train. And if it was a known route, it'd be fine. But the doctor that I started going to was walking distance away from my dorm. However, getting there from my home, I don't know that particular train transfer. And normally I'm perfectly fine just like going at it, finding it on my own, asking someone for directions. But, and this, I feel like I mentioned this a little bit earlier, like to the blind person, whether or not we want to touch people or interact with people. And I definitely did not. Like, people were going crazy. People not wearing masks, people coughing on
Mm-hmm.
people like all this wildness. And I was just like, I don't want to be part of that.
Right.
And so luckily my mom, she had a few friends who did drive us, and, you know, she's tried minimizing her time outside except for when she had to go to work and yada, yada, yada. And so I definitely feel like it's a disconcerting feeling, you know, wearing the masks, like kind of like, you know, when we're all bundled up for winter and, you know, we have our hats pulled over our ears and our scarves to our noses and, you know, um, it's definitely disconcerting. And I feel like there's a lot to focus on, you know, especially with it getting hotter. There's a lot to focus on, you know, like, you know, how's my breathing? How's this and that? And so I see what you mean. I can't speak too much to it, like I said, because I haven't done too much active travel by myself. You know, I was being guided by my mom, you know, in these past few months because I have not wanted to travel by myself.
Right.
But I can definitely see that, like, you just have so many different things to focus on with this mask.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I remember what I was gonna say, because see what I mean? My mind's like, okay. So yes, about the whole touching thing. I feel like now, because, you know, a lot of places have all these rules, like, which is understandable. It's completely understandable. But I feel like one thing for us, like, we use our hands so much for a lot of things. We have to touch things. That's how we figure out our surroundings. And I feel like
refilling your Metro card, taking money out of the bank, you have to touch the ATM. And yes, a sighted person does too, but for a blind person, we do have to do a little bit more feeling.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's gonna be even, like, harder now, because obviously with a lot of the rules that are in place, I don't know if people are gonna be comfortable with having people like run their hands all over the stuff, especially when you're in the grocery store and you're like, okay, is this what I needed? Like, you know,
Is this tomato ripe or this cucumber or whatever? And obviously, yes, you still do have to touch it, but sorry, I thought my mom was calling me. But yeah, obviously, yes, you do have to touch it and to check on it. And I mean, I guess, you know, making sure you have gloves on, but then we have the people who are just like blatantly like flouting the rules, who are just like, no gloves, no mask, no nothing. And it just it gets to be a lot, you know. It's just like worrisome. And, you know, so most people, maybe they'll just eyeball it, but for a blind person, like, that's where we can't just eyeball something. And give me 1 second, Mom. It's okay. I'm just telling you I'm going to please, okay? Close the door? Yeah. Okay.
It's okay. That happened in your video. I just went on mute. Like, really? She's like, sorry.
But yeah, I didn't expect her to like just walk in. I was like, oh, maybe we should just like wait a little while. But yeah, so, you know, like, some people might just eyeball it, but for a blind person, it's like, no, I want to make sure that it feels good. I want to, you know, and so then people might be uncomfortable, like, I don't really want you touching that, or, you know. So I see where there could be problems. I also see where maybe things might be revolutionized with regard to, you know, there's going to be a lot more touch things, but maybe like accessibility will be packed into it. Like, I think about, you know, the self-checkout machines at CVS or Target or something, and I feel like those things are so close to being accessible. Like, it already speaks. There's just not the right amount of feedback on like that we might find on our iPhone or something like that. And it's so close to being accessible, but it's not quite there yet. And so I feel like this could be like a new wave of, you know, like touchless things. And then we'll have a lot of power from our phones, which we already do have. And so there'll be a lot of like interactions and transactions and stuff like that we can do from our phone, not having to rely on people. But we can't get rid of human interaction altogether. And we can't get rid of, again, like, our phone is not going to tell us if this is a perfectly ripe pear or something, you know. So I really think it's going to be a mixed bag, and I hope that it airs more on the side of good than bad, but I think it's going to be a mixed bag.
I agree. I definitely don't think that there's going to be any form of normalcy, at least for a while. And I still feel like, I know this is about like specifically in terms of accessibility, but I just feel like in general, people, like, interacting with people that you haven't seen in months, or just like, you know, just people in general, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, just because I know a lot of people are going to be like, okay, I don't want to just human interaction is going to be totally different. And I'm curious I want to see, like, in a good way. I hope that it works out in a good way where people are not
me too.
respectful about it and be like, oh, like, I don't know, like, so I don't know. I've just been thinking about a couple of those things because it's definitely something that we have to think about. I think that a lot of us especially have to discuss these types of things because we don't know for our situations, like, what it's going to be like after all of this.
It's important to think about it. It's important to like hypothesize. We obviously don't know definitively, but it's definitely important to like wonder. People are like, okay, we're going to do away with the handshake. That was kind of gross anyway. I don't know if you washed your hands.
Right.
We're going to do away with, perhaps like the double and triple cheek kisses in some cultures. And, they talk about like in Japanese culture, there are like tons of different types of bows and things like that. Maybe we'll, incorporate that or like incorporate just other non-touch greetings. And I can see that being, good. Like it might take the awkwardness out of, like, there's definitely been times where I've, stuck my hand out to shake someone and they either did not hold out their hand or they were holding out their hand and I didn't hold out my hand and just like awkward little blind foibles. And so it could be good, but then it could be like awkward if, you misread a situation and you don't use the right hand gesture or whatever the case may be. So I could see it going either way.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like in a way for sighted people, we spoke about this in your video too, just like eye contact and the nonverbal cues. I feel like for them,
like nodding to someone rather than shaking hands.
In the hallway, like, hey, like, and I think for me, a lot of the time, like, I'm very huggable, so I like to hug people.
I like hugging too, yeah.
So I know that now I'm not going to be like hugging everybody, not that I do already, because it's just not what I do. But I know that there's people, like, I've definitely met a couple of people who were come across their friends and just, like, run up to them and, like, hug them and, like, all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, are you guys still going to be doing this after Corona?
It's definitely, something to wonder about. Before classes started going online in March, I saw an old teacher and I was like, oh my gosh, hey, and I put my phone away and I like put my hand out and then we both kind of stopped kind of like awkwardly. She's like, oh, I was going to hug you, but we can't do that. And I was like, yeah, I know. Okay, now this is awkward. So I like, took my phone back out and whatever. But I feel like there are going to be awkward interactions because this, it's ingrained in us to hug. It's ingrained in us to do whatever. Handshakes. Yeah. It's just going to be like, oh, hey. And then it's just like, no, we're not doing that. We're not shaking hands. I'm really curious about the next generation of like kids, blind and otherwise, like coming up.
Yeah.
What new social mores they'll like be brought up into. Like, I mean, little kids are disgusting. Like they don't wash their hands. They like playing. They just like being dirty. And so I wonder like how much of that will or won't change, or like what, I feel like kids are going to be kids. Like they're going to want to have fun and they're not going to be thinking about cleanliness all the time. But I wonder if it's like, will like 5-year-olds, I don't know, Sally or Ashley or whomever, like, will she just like walk around with like a mini hand sanitizer in her pocket? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder how that's going to change. But I also wonder like at blind parent, like the parents of blind children, like, are they going to be like, oh, I don't, parents are already like worried about like their children going out into the big bad world. And so I wonder if they'll be, like, oh, you don't know who's wearing a mask. You can't see this. You can't, like, I wonder if there'll be more roadblocks to independence for blind people and other disabled people as well. But I wonder, how much their parents are going to worry now with Corona and even in a post-Corona world, like how much, are they going to want them to be outside and interact outside?
My mom works with kids, and during all this, like, the remote learning was really hard because a lot of them have like different disabilities. Not all of them do, but some of them have like autism, and it's harder for them to focus. And it was just like there was a lot happening, and I think this is another thing to think about post-Corona, because so many of these kids, I would sit in some of her like class meetings and like talk to them, and so many of these kids, they would have like their good days, especially the ones with autism. There's this one kid, he's such a good kid, but there was definitely days where he would like slam down the computer and be like, I don't want to do this, which I understand because for them, they can't focus in an environment where they're surrounded by distractions. And so now I'm curious to see when they return, is it going to be easier for them, or are they going to
worse?
Yeah, are they still going to have to take more time to adjust to it, seeing that they just came back from like 4 months of sitting behind a computer screen and learning. And especially back to what you said with kids being gross, because that's definitely true. My mom's like, listen, we have hand sanitizer, we got Clorox, we got everything at the school. So she's like, they're on top of them when it comes to like cleanse. You guys need to wash your hands, you need sanitizer. You can't just be walking around here like touching stuff and then touching your eyes and touching your nose and like all this stuff, you know. And I'm hoping that parents for kids, whether it's sighted or blind, I'm hoping that they'll be like training them now while they're home, especially the younger ones, to be like, this is what you're gonna have to do when you go back to school. You can't just be shaking hands with everybody and hugging everybody, you know.
Or yeah, you know, so again, just like what are you gonna, what's going to become new learned behavior for kids? What's the cleanup song going to be like now, you know? We're using Clorox and hand sanitizer and soap and water. Like, what's that going to look like? What are the Sesame Street episodes going to look like now post-corona?
Right. Yeah, there's a lot to think about, and it kind of makes me a little nervous to see what it's going to be like when we all go back to school and work. Not in a bad way, but just because of like accessibilities and
just anticipation. You're anticipating.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're gone from being in person for so long. You're just like, okay, now what? You know, the next steps. Because we can email back and forth we can get all these emails, but it doesn't do anything unless we're actually in person. Like, they're like, oh, we're going to be doing this, and we're going to be doing this, and this is what And that's the thing, too. A lot of these schools, especially colleges, a lot of them, like, rearrange a lot of furniture throughout the summertime, especially I think now with Corona being what's going on. Like, I just went to the salon the other day, and literally she had everything spaced out. They had to do a full, like, cleanup thing. And I think with schools, I'm curious to see what are the classrooms going to look like now. You know, a lot of them have desks that are
right next to each other.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I also think about, you know, immediate return to school, because I haven't heard anything from my school yet. And so I'm assuming we're going back in fall. And then, you know, a lot of people want to go back and they're like, oh, we'll just close again and whatever. And regardless of my thoughts on that, I wonder how that's going to be controlled right now. Because you can control the class size, but you can't control the hallway size. Like, maybe you can stagger, but you're not going to check every single student's like schedule. And then how are you going to control like how many people are on the buses, the trains, like all that good stuff. And then thinking about like school children, like, you know, I guess you're gonna have to have more buses in the running, like out, so that kids aren't like so close together, like school buses or whatever, so kids aren't so close together. But I wonder, you know, what it will look like immediately in fall, but what it will look like in a few years if people haven't, you know, just gone completely back to normal. If they're not like, oh, we have a vaccine now, okay, great, life's good. You know, if we've made permanent change, what will new classrooms look like? As you know, as you were saying, like, what will the furniture arrangement be like? But I'm also curious, again, just what will hallways look like? What's that going to be like? As you mentioned earlier, your cafeteria, what will lunch lines look like? You know, best friends, are they going to be like talking to each other from opposite ends of like the bench in the schoolyard, or, you know?
My school, they're having like plexiglass put up, like they're putting up plexiglass in certain areas, which is going to be interesting to see where they place it. Because like, I know how to get around my school, but I feel like once they put new things in, I'm going to be like, okay, wait, wasn't this somewhere else? Like, entrance was to this thing, you know. So I don't know, maybe there's gonna be like something separating the tables in the classrooms, you know. Maybe you just
everybody in their own separate cubicles in the classroom together. That sounds terrible.
up in the classroom. It's gonna be so interesting to see.
It definitely will. And like office hours with the professor in their tiny ass office, like what is that going to be like, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I think
I
that's
think
all
it's
I.
going to be interesting.
Do you have anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think we covered everything.
Yeah, all of our questions and anxieties.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for watching. Please remember to check out the video that we did over on Lily's channel, and I will see you the next time that I film a video. So, bye.